Loretta Saunders had hit what she called like the absolute rock bottom in her life, right? But somehow she pulled herself together and went on to earn a degree in criminology. Little did she know that in February 2014, after focusing her studies on missing and murdered Indigenous women, she would tragically become the very victim she had been researching, and what was left after she disappeared. It's this chilling story that her friends and family were forced to go through. It's just horrifying. Hey friends, welcome back to the Jaxon channel. Today, we've got a story packed with scams, betrayals, international fugitives, and cold-blooded murders. But before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments what time it is, where you're watching from, and which city you're tuning in from. All right, let's get started. Our story today takes us back to a beautiful but sometimes ruthless country, Canada. In this video, we're focusing on what's often called Canada's ocean playground, the province of Nova Scotia. It's almost completely surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, giving it some of the best beaches in the country. So honestly, wherever you are, you're never more than 40 miles from the coast in Nova Scotia. The province really takes advantage of that. You've got fishing ports sprinkled all along the populated areas, and the capital, Halifax, not an exception. It's a port city with the longest waterfront in the world, where you can chill with food and drinks while staring out at the endless Atlantic. And it's right here in Halifax that we meet a young woman named Loretta Saunders. Loretta was born in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Newfoundland on August 25th, 1987. Her mum, Miriam Tariak, was Inuit, and her dad, Clayton Saunders, was of Inuit and European descent. Loretta was the fifth child in a blended family. Her mum already had 2 kids from previous relationships. And for Clayton, Loretta was one of his first biological children, whom he loved beyond words. So much so that everyone affectionately called her their little princess. Loretta's family was like really unique and way bigger than your average family connected only by blood. Her parents often took in local Indigenous kids who were homeless or had suffered abuse. Over the years, they took in dozens of children, and their dinner table regularly had 10 to 12 people around it. Even with all the noise and chaos, life in their home was happy and full of warmth. So from a really young age, Loretta was super ambitious. She dreamed of becoming a detective or a lawyer, basically someone who could help people the most. And like, she was really determined to chase that goal, but unfortunately things started to change in high school. See, in 9th grade, Loretta became a target of bullying, and it all came to a head on this one day when her parents got a call from the school. Apparently she had hit a classmate, which was totally not like her at all. But once they figured out what happened, it made sense. This classmate had tried to grab her inappropriately. Her parents, Miriam and Clayton, couldn't be mad at her for that. So instead of punishing her, they pulled her out of the school and transferred her somewhere else. But honestly, the incident really left a mark on her. By the time she was 15, she decided to move to Montreal to start fresh. But life in the big city turned out to be way harder than she expected, and eventually, Loretta ended up homeless. Things got even worse when she first ran into drugs and alcohol. She ended up living on the streets for over 2 years. Still, deep down, Loretta knew this wasn't the path she was meant to take. She realized she needed to break out of it and get her life back on track. So she went back to Newfoundland, where her family immediately noticed she was thinner, depressed, and sleeping a lot. But luckily, her determination kicked in again. And seriously, you gotta respect this. She finished high school while working night shifts. Loretta also found comfort in her Indigenous roots. She started asking her parents about their experiences as Inuit and became interested in traditional practices, healing ceremonies, smoke cleansings, that sort of thing. After she graduated, Loretta moved to Halifax to study sociology and criminology. Her sister, Delilah, moved with her, and they shared a place, while Loretta worked toward her bachelor's degree. Now, here's a little warning, tragically. Loretta ended up specializing in the exact issue she would eventually become a victim of: missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada. School was super important to her. She genuinely believed she could make a difference in this field. Her friends said she saw herself, her sister, her aunt in those statistics, and that's what pushed her the most. By November 2013, Delilah had moved out to British Columbia to start her own life, leaving Loretta to continue her studies alone. And life kept moving fast for Loretta because, within a month, she got pregnant by her boyfriend. So, in interviews, international media reported that Loretta and Yelchin had a happy and healthy relationship. They were planning a future together, and after Loretta found out she was pregnant, she basically spent most of her time at his place. But then the funding for her graduate studies got cut and she had to figure out other ways to pay for school. To handle the finances, she decided to rent out a second room, the one her sister Delilah had lived in before. That's how she found a couple who agreed to rent the room through Kijiji, which is like a really popular site in Canada. Because of the terms of her lease, she couldn't make an official contract, so everything had to happen under the table. She rented the room to a 25-year-old guy named Blake Leggett and his 28-year-old girlfriend, Victoria Henneberry. They were looking for a place and moved in January, agreeing to pay $430 a month. But when February came around, their second month, they didn't pay. Loretta was patient. Even though they hadn't paid, she gave them a chance. But days turned into weeks, and the money never came. Naturally, she started getting really frustrated with the situation. So, on February 13th, 2014, she told Yelchin she was going to go collect the money she was owed. At 10:57 a.m. on that day, surveillance cameras caught Loretta stepping into the elevator in her apartment building. You could see she had a goal in mind, but she acted completely normal. She was wearing jeans, a hoodie, and ankle boots. Sadly, no one knew at the time that this would be the last time she'd ever be seen on video. Loretta had planned to come straight back home after that, but hours passed and there was no sign of her. Yelchin started wondering where she was. Though he wasn't overly worried, he knew Loretta valued her freedom and independence. But later that night, he got this weird message from her number. It said, "I'm so exhausted. I need money, but I locked myself out of my banking apps. I'm so exhausted, I can't even remember my mum's middle name." Other family members got similar messages, and it immediately raised alarms. It seemed like she was trying to log into her banking apps but couldn't answer the security questions. These strange messages kept coming for the next 24 hours, and friends and family began to worry that she was somewhere, like, in serious distress. Considering her past and her time in a meth recovery program, these messages made the fear even worse. But, like, the scariest part was something else entirely. Loretta hadn't been in touch with her dad, Clayton, for several days, and that was so not like her. They were incredibly close. So, on February 17th, 4 days after anyone had last heard from her, the family finally reported her missing to the police. Her family was determined to help with the search. Lots of people came to Halifax to support the investigation. After talking with her partner, the police had an obvious starting point: her apartment complex. Even though the tenants had only just moved in, Yelchin didn't know anything about them. They'd found the ad on a private site, there was no official lease, and Loretta handled everything herself. Luckily for the police, the building had just one security camera, but it covered the only entrance and exit. No one could get in or out unnoticed. The footage showed Loretta entering the building, but there was no record of her ever leaving. After interviewing residents and neighbours, the authorities finally got the names and descriptions of the people who had moved into her apartment. Suspicion grew even more because the couple suddenly disappeared around Valentine's Day. Investigators also got access to Loretta's banking records. They discovered that her card had been used multiple times after she went missing. But one transaction, in particular, stood out. Around 5 p.m. on February 13th, in true Canadian fashion, Loretta's card was used at a local Tim Hortons. Her blue Toyota was caught on camera as it pulled up to the drive-thru, and the purchase was made using the touchscreen. The video quality was super bad, but it confirmed that there were 2 people in the car. That meant Loretta wasn't alone. But, who was with her? There was another camera inside Tim Hortons pointing at the order window. Most of the car was blocked by an employee, so the footage was limited. But at the end, a barely noticeable movement revealed the driver. A balding white man, definitely not Loretta's boyfriend. And in the passenger seat, there was another person who, based on what could be seen, appeared to be a woman in a light blue coat, likely Loretta. Even though this video became a key piece of evidence, the investigators had no clue where the car had gone or who was in it after the Tim Hortons visit. Their only shot was to comb the area for other cameras that might have caught the blue Toyota. Luckily, just about 100 yards from Tim Hortons, a new lead appeared. A few minutes before the car pulled up to the coffee shop, Loretta's vehicle was spotted near a local Sobeys supermarket. A woman got out of the passenger seat and walked toward the entrance. But the footage inside the store revealed something even more disturbing. Based on her hair color and build, the woman in the light blue coat was definitely not Loretta. This raised some really serious questions. Who were these people? Where was Loretta? And why were they using her car and her bank card? No new evidence came up right away. With Loretta missing for over a week, her family went public, appealing to anyone who might have information that could help find her.
Supporters are distributing a new batch of posters desperate for more clues. With the likelihood of good news diminishing, her sister is drawing on Loretta's character to persevere.
She is so strong, and that's what's keeping me going through this. Knowing that she wouldn't want us, wasting time crying and, sitting around feeling bad.
More family members are flying to help.
News of Loretta's disappearance spread all across Canada. Her photo and the image of her blue Toyota became nationally recognized. The police kept hope alive and worked tirelessly, but everyone started asking themselves, would she ever be found? In a huge country like Canada, vanishing without a trace is unfortunately pretty easy. Then, suddenly, almost 2,000 miles away, right near the US border, in the town of Harrow, a real breakthrough appeared. Local police got a call. It was an anonymous tip from someone who'd heard about Loretta's disappearance. They spotted a blue Toyota parked on a residential street nearby. The police expected it might be a false alarm, but when they got there, the call turned out to be invaluable. The license plates matched perfectly. Authorities immediately became suspicious, and inside the house, there were two people whose appearances matched those seen on the security footage. They decided to move in and make arrests right away. The pair were identified as Blake Leggett and Victoria Henneberry. The IDs in their wallets confirmed they were the same people who had lived in Loretta's apartment. At that point, there wasn't any evidence that Loretta had been the victim of a crime, so the two were arrested for possession of a stolen car and bank card. During the first few minutes of questioning, their alibis strangely aligned. Victoria claimed that they had bought Loretta's car from her because they were planning to visit friends in Harrow for Valentine's Day. But then the couple made a critical mistake. While Blake told investigators they had left for Harrow earlier that week, Victoria insisted that at the time of Loretta's disappearance, they were actually somewhere completely different in the country. That contradiction in their alibis basically tripped them up. They'd tangled themselves in lies. This was just the beginning of their rapid spiral into jail, because during a search, officers found Loretta's phone in Victoria's possession. With this new evidence, detectives decided to review the building's security footage again, and what they found was seriously damning. At 2:28 p.m, about 3 hours after Loretta had taken the elevator, Blake Leggett was caught on camera coming down with a large hockey bag that looked heavy and stuffed with stuff. Then he went back into the building with a plastic bag, but after going in and coming out again, the bag was gone. When he went back upstairs, Blake returned with a different piece of luggage. And on his third trip down the elevator, he wasn't alone. Victoria was with him, wearing that same blue coat she'd been seen in on the Sobeys and Tim Hortons footage. The police immediately suspected foul play. The way Blake carried that bag was totally unusual. It sagged in the middle, like there was something really heavy inside. But without actually finding the hockey bag, they couldn't know for sure what was in it. At that point, all they could do was question both of them. But the next discovery shocked even the most seasoned detectives, and at the same time, it was so absurd it was almost laughable. While examining Blake's phone, they found a video recording of an argument between him and Victoria. The fight was about killing Loretta, and the video had been shot just a few days before her disappearance. Why anyone would even record something like that? Totally mind-blowing.
This is why Victoria should not drink.
You really think I don't want to be with you?
When I'm sober? And if you
Stupid.
Why? What have I done?
You can't even say that you really want to kill Loretta. You said that you want to kill her earlier.
When did I say that?
You're a liar. You're the one who said.
You
just
said.
From that recording, it became crystal clear that the police were dealing with a really unstable couple, people who, just days before Loretta vanished, were literally talking about killing their landlord. And while Blake kept pretending he was innocent, even after seeing the footage and security recordings, Victoria couldn't hold it in. Within hours, she quietly told her investigator that Blake had killed Loretta. But to fully nail the case, the detectives needed the most important piece of the puzzle they had to know where Loretta was, and it seemed like Victoria was willing to help fill in that gap. After some convincing, she agreed to show them where they'd dumped the body. Along the Trans-Canada Highway, a little north of Salisbury, in an area buried under deep snow, Loretta's body was finally found. She was inside that now familiar hockey bag, and her head was wrapped in multiple layers of plastic. The autopsy confirmed that the cause of death was strangulation, which lined up perfectly with the story given to officers. Loretta had come to the apartment a little before 11 a.m. that Thursday. She knocked, Victoria opened the door, and Loretta stepped inside. When she asked why the rent still hadn't been paid, Victoria lied, saying she'd lost her bank card but would call the bank immediately to order a new one. Victoria stepped into the kitchen and heard Blake moving in the hallway, out of sight. Although they'd discussed it before, Victoria supposedly didn't know her boyfriend was planning to kill Loretta. Blake burst into the living room, knocked Loretta to the floor, and put 3 plastic bags over her head. When she resisted, he sat on top of her and slammed her head against the floor until she passed out. Then he held her down until she suffocated. Once Blake was sure Loretta was dead, he called Victoria to help. Together, they stuffed her body into the hockey bag. Blake made several trips down to Loretta's blue Toyota while Victoria packed their things. The entire route from Sobeys to Tim Hortons and beyond, out of the camera's view, carried her lifeless body in the bag. After leaving Halifax, Blake and Victoria drove to Harrow, planning to stay with friends. During the trip, a light snowfall gradually turned into a fierce blizzard. That's when they decided to bury Loretta under a thick layer of snow that could have stayed preserved for months in Canada. Initially, they planned to flee the country, thinking that by the time Loretta's body was discovered, they'd be long gone. But Victoria couldn't keep the secret, and just 2 weeks later, they were both arrested. Loretta's family was devastated by the news. They had clung to hope that she would return safely, but finding her body made it painfully clear they would never hug her again. And that unbearable grief quickly turned into anger. Victoria Henneberry and Blake Leggett became the target of all that rage, and in April 2016, they finally faced trial. Although Victoria essentially confessed to the crime, both she and Blake maintained their innocence until the final verdict. In the end, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. Blake, who physically took Loretta's life, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Loretta Sanders left a huge void in her close-knit family. Through her murder, they lost a daughter, sister, cousin, aunt, and friend. The crime itself was horrific, but it becomes even more tragic when you remember that at the time, Loretta was 3 months pregnant. Yelchin, unfortunately, lost the most. He would never see or kiss his wife again, and he would never meet their child. There's no doubt that Loretta had faced difficult circumstances in the past, but the way she managed to turn her life around, rebuild herself, and move it in a brighter direction was truly admirable, especially given her dedication to the cause of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And that's what makes this case even darker. She became the victim of the very type of crime she had studied and worked to stop. Loretta had been deeply troubled and frustrated. The issue of violence against Indigenous women in Canada was painfully obvious to her, and it weighed on her that their voices were often ignored or misrepresented in the media. As I've mentioned in previous cases, this remains an ongoing epidemic in North America, one that desperately needs to be addressed. There are other dark layers to this story. Reportedly, Loretta's case was initially handled with great diligence, and officers appeared professional and respectful toward her family. At first, she was described as a slim white woman, but when her mother Miriam corrected them, noting Loretta's Inuit heritage, the family says the police's interest noticeably decreased. From that point, it seems the authorities were less thorough in their search for her. Many link this to her appearance. Loretta had fair skin, blue eyes, and blonde hair. While her Indigenous heritage was a core part of her identity, she outwardly looked European. Her family claimed that this was why the case initially received so much attention, only to almost disappear from the radar later, even though there were clear suspects. Loretta was an extraordinary woman and will be remembered as such by countless people. Her message that Indigenous women should not be disrespected or harmed reached millions. It's a message that I believe one day will help overcome the epidemic we're still fighting today. Who knows what else Loretta could have achieved for her community? Sadly, we'll never find out. Her life and future were stolen by two cruel, greedy monsters, and all over a pathetic $600. I truly hope that our friends, family, loved ones, and Yelchin can one day find some peace and move forward. And that's where we'll wrap up today's case, folks. In the meantime, don't forget to share your thoughts down in the comments, but until that moment comes, remember to take care of each other, and of course, stay safe. Thanks so much, and goodbye for now.